Okay, should I just get started?
No, just give it a couple of seconds and I'll introduce you.
Okay, all right.
Hey everyone, my name is Kajal and thank you for joining us today. If you can see us live right now and can hear us clearly, please put it in the comments below. And at any point, if you feel you can't hear us, please put it in the chat so we know that, okay, we need to fix something and there's some error somewhere. And yes, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time this Saturday morning or wherever you are in whatever time zone for joining us today. Today we have with us Dasani. She also goes by Dasani Decoded on Instagram and LinkedIn. Today she's going to talk about how to network as an introvert. So Dasani, you
Hey,
want to start it with your introduction?
yeah, it sounds like a plan. So, hey everyone, my name is Dasani. I am a product manager at Microsoft. But when I'm not working, I'm really passionate about helping people from non-traditional backgrounds start their careers. So, um, as a part of that, I also have a blog called Dasani Decoded, where I also do some coaching and I do a lot of doodling to share my ideas. So today I'm going to be talking about what helped me network as an introvert. And a fun fact is all the illustrations on the slides are ones that I've made. Um, with that, I can get started. Does that sound good, Kajal?
So,
All
yeah.
right, let's go. One of the reasons I have a taco on the slide is because I was debating whether or not I should call this like networking for awko tacos. So that's like my introvert mascot. Um, so to kind of get started, here's a little bit of what I feel like my networking journey went like. Um, when I first thought of the word networking, it felt really icky and it just felt kind of dirty. I felt like, oh, I don't want to be that kind of manipulative person. But when I moved to the US for college, so I moved from India to the US, and I didn't really know anyone. And I also was in a situation where I really needed to get a job and support myself financially. So I realized, well, if I'm going to make friends or get a job or anything, I need to network and meet people, but I kind of suck at it. And the largely the reason I felt that way was just because the idea of I had in my head about what networking looked like was just not something that came naturally to me. And I felt like I was pretending to be somebody else, which is why I ended up sucking because I just got in my head and then I was trying to pretend to be someone that I really wasn't. And then slowly I kind of tried to break down like my personal myths around networking, and I realized maybe there's a way I can do this by being true to myself. And now sometimes I still struggle, but I have gotten a lot better at finding my people the way I'd like to. And a lot of cool things happened. One really scary thing that I never thought I'd be able to do was I went to a hackathon with a group of people I'd never met, and um, we won the hackathon. But more importantly, I got to meet a bunch of strangers.
Woohoo.
We built something like, yeah. I got invited to apply for my job at Microsoft. Google paid for a portion of my college tuition, and more importantly, I got to meet a lot of really cool people that really expanded my view of what was possible for me, and and that just opened so many doors, both in my own mind, but in the real world too. So I guess one of the reasons I wanted to specifically target this presentation around networking for introverts is that usually the typical rules around networking don't really make sense to someone who's more introverted. There's a lot of, try to sell yourself, try to pitch and be really loud, I guess. And I don't think that really works for someone who's more introverted. there's a lot of different definitions, and it's kind of like a spectrum, but people who are more on the introverted side of the spectrum typically have a little bit of a lower social battery. They don't really feed off of the energy of in a group setting or meeting people like an extrovert does. Usually, you like to take more time to articulate your thoughts, and you like to think a lot before you say what you want to say. And this usually means some of like the on the spot type of networking events are not the most effective. Just jumping into a room full of strangers and trying to make small talk isn't really effective sometimes for someone who's on the more introverted side of things. Um, and I do have this doodle on the side for this book I really love called The Power of Quiet. So if you are introverted and you're kind of struggling to, you see it as something of a negative, I would really recommend reading this book because it's all about learning how to use your own introversion as a strength. Um, so with that, so
I just
my
want
personal
to interrupt and say a good comment that we got from the audience here, that the illustrations are cute, which they are,
thank you.
and very relatable.
That means a lot. Thank you. Um, so my personal networking journey really improved when I kind of dismantled what networking meant for me and identifying a lot of the myths I had around networking. So I would love to hear from the audience and from you, Kajal, like what were your impressions when you first heard like networking?
To be honest, yes, even networking for me was very tricky. A lot of people look at me now, especially because I'm a YouTuber, and say, wow, you're so confident. You can easily talk to people. And it's true now, but back when I was a kid, I was very introverted. I didn't like talking to people because, like you said, it's very tricky to come up with words to say. You have to think, and it requires so much energy that I didn't think I have it had it in me. What about the audience? Anyone wants to share your journey or what you felt like when you had to network? Please do so in the comments below. We'll truly appreciate it. Okay, while we
Yeah,
wait, we want to continue because there's a lag.
yeah, for sure. I'm totally with you with what you said. Sometimes it's just I personally, especially if I'm not mentally prepared for certain situations, I get really, really drained very quickly. And a funny story actually is that when I first went to Grace Hopper, I was so excited and I really wanted to be there. But I got so tired after the first hour, I literally found a couch and took a nap because it was just too draining for me. And it was not a place that it wasn't that I didn't want to be there or that I didn't want to talk to people, but it was just very emotionally and like physically exhausting that I needed to go to sleep.
Yeah, that's true. Conferences and especially huge events, we're talking to a lot of people, it can get draining on your energy. And we do have one comment from our audience. I could see people doing it very naturally, whereas with me, there are more awkward moments. Yes, I've had my share of awkward moments.
Plus one to that. That's a large reason why I wanted to call this like networking for awko tacos because that's like what inhibited me. I was like, oh, I'm so awkward. Why would anyone want to listen to me? But really, I don't think people think of that as a negative. Um, so here's some of my networking. I just think, well, first impressions are everything. So if I don't get them, if I'm awkward or if I don't make the best first impression, I'm screwed. I used to think you have to be good at small talk. Um, I also thought networking only happened at like a big conference or in these like fancy rooms where everyone wore suits. And then I also thought you had to be persuasive or manipulative. And over time, I kind of rewrote those rules for myself. So one thing I've personally found is that first impressions are kind of overrated. I know like every book is like, oh, make a good first impression, but I think consistency and following up make up for that and are often usually more valuable. Like if you make a good first impression, but you don't follow up on it, or if you are kind of standoffish later, that might, put somebody off. And usually, even when I go to a conference or something and I don't always like introduce myself even, or don't make that really meaningful first impression in a crowd, like I've had really effective relationships by just like, finding someone's email or searching them up and then like messaging them with like a really well-researched message later, with where I get to like think what I want to say out loud. Um, and the other part, you need to be good at small talk. I mean, small talk doesn't make that great of an impression. I think doing your research is so much more valuable. And I think that introverts are pretty good at that because you do like to think and digest before you formulate what you want to say. So you're more likely to just go ahead and do your research before you reach out to someone. So I personally, like when someone reaches out to me, when they're just like, help me with Java versus like they do their research to figure out who I am, it makes a big difference. Um, the third point was networking really happens everywhere. Your peers or your network. I used to think that, somebody had to be like more senior to me for it to be like a really meaningful relationship, but truly, the people in my life that are my friends really influence me more than anybody. So networking can happen everywhere, whether it's over baking cookies or at like, I don't know, you play a sport or at like an art club. So wherever your interests are, wherever there's like some other people, you can network. And the other part was like, I used to think that I had to be like kind of persuasive and manipulative, and I hated feeling that way. And that was one of the reasons I felt so awkward. Really, just being genuine and caring goes a long way, longer than you realize in your head, because nobody likes feeling used and nobody likes the feeling of being manipulated. So yeah, I don't think, I think that was like a really, I was kind of way off on the myth I had about networking over there. But yeah, so before I move on to the next step, is this something that resonated with you? I'd love to hear if, other people had these kinds of myths when they thought of networking.
Yeah, please share in what myths you've come across or what myths you had and you completely changed your opinion after that. I know I personally also used to think that, network is all about being persuasive and you have to kind of say the right things to get what you want. And it's not that. It's networking is really about making a connection with someone, and you never know how you may help them and how they may help you. So just go out there and try that. And honestly, also as someone who's been on this side and people have come and networked with me, if you're trying to be manipulative, it comes off. Like people can see through you unless you are some really good manipulator. I don't think you can like kind of just go through with it and the other person not realizing what you're doing. Even if they'll say yes to you, they will not do what you asked for.
Yeah, that is so true. Like, especially now that I've been on the other side, it's like, wow, you can really tell when someone's trying to put up a front. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a very nice comment as well from our audience that's saying everything is so relatable. Yep, all the points on the slides are very relatable.
That makes me happy. Yeah, I definitely think that, some of these rules, like if you read some of those traditional books, it feels like very overwhelming, when in reality, I feel like networking is just about being human and finding through. Um, so I kind of these myths out for myself. I think, because networking can happen everywhere and there's so many different cool ways to meet people and build effective relationships, what really helps is kind of figuring out what your networking comfort zone is as an introvert. So that makes it so much less draining and so much more effective. And that way you can really show up as yourself when you're trying to meet somebody new. I like to call this your networking comfort zone. So one way, a few questions you can ask yourself to figure out what this is for you is, think of times when you had a really great conversation, whether it's online or in person or in a chat forum. What did these situations have in common? And how could you potentially creatively replicate this in your life? And to start you off, here's what I wrote down for myself when I did this exercise. So times I had really great conversations where I felt really comfortable and confident was when I used to be a tutor. And so when I was tutoring or volunteering or helping somebody in some sort, it's like I know what to do here. And it was really clear. So it felt very comfortable for me. I was also a lot more comfortable in like a virtual setting. That means like, when I got to write my thoughts out. So whether it's emails or messaging, like I can email like a boss, but sometimes I'm a lot more awkward when it's in person. And then C is kind of similar to the first part where somebody else reached out to me for help. Like I am so much more confident when someone else reaches out to me versus when I'm like reaching out to someone else for help. So if I kind of looked at the common threads, it was really I was helping somebody else. I had space to really think and digest what I wanted to say, and one-on-one conversations. Like I had much more effective conversations when it was one-on-one versus I was trying to like fight for time in a group setting. Um, so ways I replicated this in my life, I initiated a lot of new conversations over emails or messages. It was a little scary to reach out to someone new, but I was a lot more comfortable cold emailing someone versus reaching out to a stranger in like a conference. I started blogging. So I found that one of the reasons I started blogging was because I felt like I had so much that I wanted to share about a topic, but I could never really say it in like a one-on-one type setting because I just couldn't, I didn't have the time to formulate and write things to the level of detail that I wanted. And then the third part is like, if I am at a conference, instead of putting too much energy into like talking to too many people, I would just take down all the contacts of the people that I thought were cool and then like reach out to them a week later or even before if I knew that they were going to be there. And that way I got to start conversations over email and messages, which is my comfort zone. And I could make a better, you know, I could show that I did my research better.
Yeah, and that
So
makes sense. So I wanted to interject and ask you this one question that I know a lot of introverts face when they're writing an email or texting about overthinking. Like you type something in and then you'd erase and then you type it again. At the same time, sometimes you'd end up writing really long message when it could have been said in a shorter sentence or a paragraph. How do you deal with that? How do you balance that?
yeah, that's a good question. So personally for me, I always felt really comfortable with emails, partly because I used to like proofread all my mom's emails for her when she was like working as a kid. So I'd like, rewrite her grammar and like help her structure stuff. So it's my personal comfort zone. So I'm very comfortable with like writing emails or reaching out to someone that way. If you're reaching out to a cold email, like cold emailing someone, one, I think showing that you did your research so you actually like know who this person is, like indicating where you met them, and then just kind of putting in showing that like you like them. I think that really helps, like coming from a place of like gratitude or something really helps. I think in general, I would say obviously like writing a really long email means that I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it just means that somebody else is going to take a lot longer to respond and digest your email. But yeah, I would say think about what are the top two or three things you want across and what would you love to get out of their response. So for example, like let me think of an example. Like Kajal, like when you reached out to me, it was okay. You wanted me to collaborate with you in this YouTube thing, and then just saying like, hey, like we did interact a little bit before already, like through comments and stuff, but just saying like, oh, I know what you do. I saw that you talk about these specific things, and I think this is like what I'd want to get out of the conversation. So just really being crisp and sticking to like the 3 points you want to get across makes it a lot easier. But yeah, I would say find that comfort zone for you. So if it's not email, but if it's like maybe you're in a Facebook group and there's like a very common interest about something you know about, maybe that's like your comfort zone and where you can start. Um,
Yeah, very well said. Like you said, when you're sending someone a message, try to think of like these three things. How did you meet them? What is it that you want from them? And why is it that you're connecting with them? So why is essentially, okay, I like your work, and that's where your research really comes in. For example, with me, if I'm a roboticist, so if someone sends me a message about that, I know that, okay, this person's actually looked into me, they know what I'm talking about. But then if someone sends me a completely unrelated message, I'm like, okay, I don't know if I can help you here, because I this is not my field. And it also shows that, okay, this person's just randomly sent me a message without even taking a look at my profile.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my favorite one is when someone like on LinkedIn will message me and ask me like where I work. I'm like, are you serious? It's like literally that's what LinkedIn is for, to see where I work. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. I did want to ask you
Okay.
one more question that was pre-submitted.
Mhm.
So you did mention that you go to a conference, you take down people's contacts, and then you find ways to reach out to them. There's a similar question that was pre-submitted: is how do you follow up with people? You met someone. What are some of the tips, or how do you reach out? What are some tips you have for that?
Yeah, I think the great thing about if you're following up, quote unquote, is that you already have some initial ground. So, like, I would say think about a few things you want to mention from that conversation. And then when you're following up, just bring those things up. So, for example, like if you wanted to follow up with me after this talk, you could say like, I was in this talk and I really took away these three things, and then have your ask at the end. So whether it's I mean, I would not ask for something demanding, but more so say that, I don't know, whether it's like something of appreciation or whether it's something that you'd like to see more, something that's like a low ticket follow up would be really great. And if it's something that you've already had a one-on-one with someone and you want to keep that conversation going, I think I would follow the same structure, like list down your takeaways and then like make a plan of action. Like if you want to meet them the next time again, like what would you want to discuss? And do a little brainstorming about like if you do have another meeting, like what would you really want to have a conversation about? So that way it's really clear what for the other person what they're committing to, and also for you when you meet again, you kind of know what you want to talk about, and you don't have to brainstorm on the spot for things you want to say.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Great. Any other questions or comments?
No, I think we're good to go.
Okay,
Thank you
awesome.
so much.
Well, yeah, so I would encourage you to write these questions down and think about what your networking comfort zone is. And here are some ideas. I would say take advantage of the internet. If you like to really ruminate and jot down your thoughts, I think the internet is a great resource. I also love bringing a friend. So if I'm going to somewhere that is new to me, I really like having someone else that I know be there, especially if they're extroverted than me or if they know somebody there. That way, at least I have some point of comfort. So it's not completely diving in the deep end. And then another fun idea is like, you're usually comfortable in places that you do stuff that you're good at or you enjoy. So if you like to draw or bake or I don't know, run or something, like find an activity that where you feel comfortable and then like stretch it a little bit. So you're inviting somebody else to do that along with you. These are just ideas. So I'd really, take some time to just brainstorm on your own. And I'm sure there's lots of really creative ways you can network. But I will say, regardless of, whether while you're reframing networking to be in your own comfort zone, it's all going to take a little bit of courage regardless. Like reaching out and building a relationship with a stranger requires like some level of vulnerability. It takes a little bit of I don't know, like getting hyped up by a friend to go that extra mile to stretch yourself. So you can't really avoid the courage part of it, whether you're emailing a stranger or whether you're trying to reach out to somebody that you kind of know in class, but want to get to know a little bit more. So you can't really avoid that part, unfortunately or fortunately, but you'll be better for it. And I think we did touch on this a bit, but you are going to have awkward moments regardless, because you're putting yourself out there and you're being vulnerable, and things are going to go wrong for sure. And I would just say, one, it's really not always your fault. You can't control how conversations go. You can't control how other people react. And sometimes there's really nothing that you could have done to make that a better conversation. So it's not really always you. And really just remind yourself that you already were pretty brave, because you took that ounce of courage and put yourself out there. And at the end of the day, like, the ones that matter are the good conversations and the people that you personally vibed with. So make sure that you don't take it for granted when you do have a meaningful conversation. And quality is better than quantity sometimes. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'd love to, continue. I think we have a bit more time, so happy to chat some more, share my experiences. But and here's a few other places you can find me on the internet. So yeah.
Yes, please do go check out all of her online profiles, including her blog and Medium. She writes amazing articles, and they're filled with really cute and very relatable doodles. I've included all of them in the description below, and I'm also going to ask her two more questions that I'd submitted, that were pre-submitted. So one of them was, how do you find places to connect people with? I know you touched up a little bit upon that, but let's say, for me, I am a roboticist, so I know all of the places where I can find other roboticists. So how do you go about finding such places?
Yeah. So I think right now I do get a lot of people coming my way, which is nice, which is partly why, like, the blogging stuff helped for me, because it's like, oh, I can have more people reach out to me, and that would be my comfort zone, as opposed to like the other way. But I definitely say Twitter is an interesting place that I'm currently exploring. I don't use Facebook as much now, but definitely, like, looking for some key Facebook groups of areas that you're interested in, and just kind of commenting. Or it's really easy to reach out to someone if you're in the same group as them, and it's like a small enough group to say, like, oh, I saw you posted this thing and I had some questions. Like, usually people are open to that because you already have some common ground. But in general, I would just say, if you're trying to really build your network in a specific area, or you're trying to network for a specific goal in mind, I think there's just so many places where you could look. So I just say, make a list of, okay, who would be the ideal people you'd really want to connect with. It doesn't have to be a specific person, but if, suppose you wanted to become a designer, then you want to connect with designers who fit a certain profile, and you want to ask them very specific questions about their job. So you could go to LinkedIn, or you could go to Facebook or any other type of social media and search through designer groups and meet people that way. If you're working, or if you're at school, you could see people who are working in that space and reach out to them that way. So if you have a specific goal in mind, it becomes a lot easier to find people that you actually want to meet.
Yeah. So I did want to give a shout out to one of the comments that came in. Thank you, Dasani. And from my experience, when people met others with the intention to network, it comes off wrong. But if the intention is to get to know the other person, it's much better. Yeah, and I would agree with that.
Yeah.
You just think of it as just like, okay, I'm networking for the heck of networking, then it becomes awkward for both. But if you just keep the intention as, okay, all I want to do is find out more about this person, the conversation becomes a little easier.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. The last conference I went to before COVID, it was like, my goal is, I just want to meet people I think are cool. And it made it so much easier, because I was just like, oh, I think you're a really, really cool person, and I like all the stuff you're doing. So I just want to learn more about you. And it made it a lot easier, both for me and I think the other person appreciated that too.
Yeah, that's so true. It it's like this, right? I remember the last time when someone came up to you and said, like, hey, what do you do? Who are you? Tell me. It makes it so much
Yeah,
easier to talk about stuff.
exactly. Yeah. And you don't feel like forced to put up a front or anything. You're really there just to get to know them. And yeah, I think it makes a big difference. And
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons doing like that networking comfort zone exercise is kind of helpful, because you kind of reflect on, okay, when did I have a good conversation last, and why was it nice, like what was in common between them.
Yeah. All right. So I have one last question for you before we end this session. And before I ask that question, I do have another session coming up 2 weeks from now, which is all about how to get good feedback from your manager, your leader, or even your friends. And the link is in the description below. So my question to you, Dasani, is how to build good rapport. So the person who pre-submitted this question asked it as how to build good rapport with others in specific fields like machine learning or data science.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. I think, well, one is, you can't always have the best rapport with everybody. It's just bound to happen. But since you do have a specific goal in mind, like, oh, you want to meet more people who are, working in the field of machine learning, I would say the first thing is definitely like look at your own network. So if you're working right now, see who are the people that you could potentially connect with, that are like that you have a common ground with. So if you're, for example, you're part of a club, like um, you know, a Facebook group or a club or something, and you see that, okay, there's someone there that works in this field that, yeah, maybe I can reach out to. So it helps because you have that common ground already, and then you can kind of just build from there. And I think, just being really clear that your goal is to learn more about what they want to do, or your goal is to, yeah, be really kind of open with that, because I think that way, nobody will be, if they agree to like meet with you, I think they'll be completely comfortable with like um, addressing your concerns. And then if you did have a really good conversation, and I think that's important, like think about, well, was I able to be vulnerable with this person? Did I have an enjoyable conversation? Do I want to actually keep meeting them? And if you did, then you can like request a follow up. Or sometimes, if I feel like I can really learn a lot from somebody, and I we both like got something out of that conversation, it was good and energizing, then I'll just say like, oh, can I meet with you every month or so, or every couple of weeks? Would you be open to something like that? And usually people are open to doing that if they got a good got something out of it too.
Yeah, that's so true. And once again, Dasani, thank you so much for taking time and speaking with all of us today. Please go show her some love. Check out her Instagram, Twitter, or blog, whichever is your social media platform. And also show me some love and subscribe to my channel.
Yes, subscribe to her channel. Thanks for having me, Kajal.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, well, have
Bye.
a good week. Bye.
Yeah.